sound of splintering wood shattered the stillness of the night, jolting Margaret Lewis from her peaceful routine. The elderly widow turned sharply toward the back of her home, her heart racing as the door burst open with a deafening crash. Two men in dark masks charged in, their voices harsh and commanding as they scanned the room with predatory intent. Margaret froze, her mind scrambling for what to do, but the intruders didn't give her time to think. One stepped toward her with a crowbar raised, the other began rifling through drawers. Before fear could fully consume her, a low, guttural growl cut through the chaos like a knife. It came from Cody, her loyal Malinois Belgian Shepherd, who now stood rigid at the edge of the living room. His golden-brown fur bristled under the dim light, his sharp eyes fixed on the intruders with unwavering intensity. The men exchanged uneasy glances, their confidence faltering at the sight of the powerful dog. But Cody wasn't waiting for their next move. With a sudden burst of speed, he lunged at the man nearest to Margaret, his teeth sinking into the arm holding the crowbar. The intruder howled in pain, dropping the weapon with a metallic clang as he staggered backward. Margaret's breath caught in her throat as the second man fumbled to draw a knife from his pocket. Cody turned, positioning himself between her and the danger, his growl deepening with each passing second. Margaret's trembling hand reached for her phone, but her eyes never left Cody. In that moment, the dog wasn't just her companion, he was her guardian. Standing fearless in the face of chaos, Margaret's hand shook as she dialed the emergency number, her voice a trembling whisper as she spoke to the operator. "There are 2 men in my house. Please send help quickly," she begged, her eyes darting back to Cody, who was now circling the intruders like a predator sizing up his prey. The man Cody had bitten clutched his arm, blood seeping through his fingers as he snarled in frustration. "Get rid of that mutt," he shouted to his accomplice, who now held a knife tightly in his grip. The second man advanced cautiously, his weapon gleaming under the dim kitchen light. Cody's sharp eyes followed every movement, his body coiled like a spring, ready to strike. Margaret pressed herself into the corner, trying to stay as still as possible. The chaos around her seemed to stretch time, every second agonizingly slow. The knife-wielding man lunged, swinging wildly in an attempt to slash at Cody, but the dog was too fast. He darted to the side, his powerful legs propelling him forward as he leapt at the man's torso. Cody's teeth found purchase in the intruder's jacket, throwing him off balance and sending him crashing into a chair. The knife clattered to the floor, sliding out of reach. Margaret's heart pounded as she clutched the phone to her chest, her mind racing. She thought about calling for Cody to retreat, but something stopped her. She saw the determination in his stance, the instinctive courage that radiated from every muscle in his body. Cody wasn't just fighting for her, he was fighting because he knew what was right. The other man, desperate and angry, grabbed a heavy vase from the coffee table and hurled it at Cody. The vase shattered against the wall, fragments raining down onto the hardwood floor. Cody didn't flinch. His growl rumbled louder, a primal sound that sent chills down Margaret's spine. The intruders were panicking now, their plan unraveling as the dog they had underestimated turned the tables. As the second man struggled to his feet, Cody shifted his position, placing himself squarely between Margaret and the 2 men. His eyes flicked between them, calculating their next move. Margaret clutched the edge of a chair for support, willing herself to stay calm. The sound of distant sirens began to grow louder, and for the first time that night, she felt a glimmer of hope. The intruders seemed to hear it too. Their movements became frantic, their whispers urgent. "We need to get out of here," one of them muttered. But Cody wasn't ready to let them go. With a fierce bark, he lunged again, snapping at their heels and forcing them toward the broken door. The men stumbled and cursed, tripping over each other in their haste to escape. As the sirens grew closer, Cody chased them out into the night, his growls fading into the distance. Margaret collapsed into the nearest chair, tears streaming down her face. Her hands trembled as she clutched the phone, the operator still on the line. "They're gone," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Cody chased them off." Moments later, the flashing lights of police cars illuminated her driveway, and Margaret let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Cody reappeared at the doorway, his chest heaving as he padded back inside. His eyes met hers, and for a brief moment, it was as if he was asking, "Are you all right?" Margaret knelt down, wrapping her arms around his neck as the chaos earlier. But Margaret couldn't relax. Her apartment was small and smelly, and the night had settled into an eerie calm after the chaos earlier. But Margaret couldn't relax. Cody lay at her feet, his ears twitching with every faint sound. Margaret gently stroked his fur, whispering softly, "You've done enough, Cody. You can rest now." But Cody wasn't resting. His body was tense, his sharp eyes darting toward the door every so often. He knew something Margaret didn't. This wasn't over. Out in the darkness, Derek and Kyle crouched behind the thick shrubs lining Margaret's backyard. Their first attempt had been a disaster, and Kyle's arms still throbbed from Cody's bite. But their pride and desperation wouldn't let them walk away. "We'll catch that dog off guard this time," Derek muttered, brandishing a heavy metal pipe. Kyle nodded, holding a flashlight and a small can of pepper spray. "Let's make this quick." Inside, Cody's ears perked up. A soft scraping sound reached him before Margaret could hear it, and he immediately stood, his body stiff with alertness. Margaret noticed his change in demeanor and followed his gaze toward the window. "Not again," she whispered, fear gripping her chest. The faint outline of two figures moving in the shadows sent her heart racing. Suddenly, the back door rattled violently. Margaret grabbed her phone, her hands shaking as she dialed the police again. "They're back," she hissed into the receiver. "Please, send someone fast." Cody growled low in his throat, positioning himself between Margaret and the door. This time, Margaret refused to cower completely. She looked around the room, grabbing a heavy lamp and clutching it tightly. "We're not going down without a fight, are we, boy?" she whispered, more to herself than to Cody. The door burst open with a deafening crash, and Derek and Kyle stormed in, their weapons at the ready. "Where's that mutt?" Derek snarled, scanning the room. He didn't have to look far. Cody charged from the shadows like a bolt of lightning, his growl echoing through the small house. He lunged at Kyle, who barely managed to dodge, falling backward onto the floor. Derek swung his pipe wildly, but Cody was too fast. The dog circled him, snapping at his heels and forcing him to backpedal. Margaret seized the moment, throwing the lamp toward Kyle as he scrambled to his feet. The heavy bass struck his shoulder, causing him to drop the pepper spray. "You old hag!" Kyle spat. But before he could react further, Cody turned his attention to him, lunging with ferocity. The flashlight fell from Kyle's hand as Cody's teeth clamped onto his jacket, dragging him down. Derek roared in frustration, swinging the pipe again, this time grazing Cody's side. Cody yelped but didn't let go. Margaret's heart raced as she saw Cody momentarily stumble. "No!" she shouted, grabbing a chair and shoving it toward Derek with all her strength. The impact knocked him off balance, sending him crashing into the coffee table. Cody seized the opportunity, releasing Kyle and pivoting to block the men's escape route. Outside, the faint sound of sirens grew louder. Derek and Kyle exchanged panicked glances. "We have to get out of here," Derek shouted, scrambling to his feet. But Cody wasn't about to let them go so easily. With a powerful leap, he lunged at Derek, forcing him to drop the pipe as he tumbled toward the door. Kyle tried to follow, but Cody barked furiously, snapping at his heels and driving him back toward the broken doorway. The intruders barely made it out into the yard before the flashing blue and red lights illuminated the street. Police officers stormed in, their weapons drawn as Cody chased the men out of sight. Within moments, the officers tackled the intruders to the ground, cuffing them and hauling them toward the waiting squad cars. Margaret sank into her chair, her body trembling as relief washed over her. Cody trotted back inside, his chest heaving but his stance still alert. He looked up at Margaret, his sharp eyes softening as he padded over to her side. She dropped to her knees, wrapping her arms around his neck. "You've done it again, Cody. You've saved me," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. The lead officer stepped inside, surveying the damage. "Ma'am, are you all right?" he asked, his voice calm and steady. Margaret nodded, wiping her tears, as she glanced at Cody. "Thanks to him, I'm fine. He's my hero." As the officers escorted the cuffed intruders away, a small crowd of neighbors began to gather outside, murmuring in awe about Cody's bravery. One of the officers knelt down, offering Cody a gentle pat on the head. "You've got quite the protector here," he said with a smile. Margaret nodded, her heart swelling with pride. "He's more than that. He's family." Townsend's fresh tears fell. "You saved me, Cody. You're my hero." With the chaos finally behind her, Margaret took a deep breath and leaned against the doorway, watching the flashing police lights fade into the distance. Her neighbors lingered outside, whispering about the events that had unfolded. Some approached cautiously, offering words of comfort and glancing with awe at Cody, who now sat calmly at Margaret's feet. His piercing eyes, once fierce with protective determination, had softened into an alert but peaceful gaze. "Margaret," called Mrs. Dawson, her neighbor from across the street, clutching a thermos of tea. "Are you all right, dear? We heard the commotion and saw the police." Margaret smiled weakly, motioning toward Cody. "Thanks to him, I'm fine. He never gave up, not for a second." She knelt down and placed a gentle hand on Cody's head. He leaned into her touch, his loyalty shining in his eyes. Mr. Peterson, the retired police officer next door, stepped forward. "That dog of yours, Margaret, he's something else. Most dogs wouldn't have had the courage or the wit to hold off two men like that. You've got a hero on your hands." Margaret chuckled softly, wiping her eyes. "He's always been my hero. Tonight, he just reminded the rest of us." As the crowd began to disperse, Margaret retreated inside, the weight of the night settling on her shoulders. The house, though safe now, bore the marks of the chaos. The shattered door, the broken furniture, and scattered debris from the struggle. Margaret felt a pang of sadness at the disruption of her peaceful sanctuary. But then her gaze fell on Cody, who was quietly inspecting the room, his nose twitching as if to ensure no further threats remained. She couldn't help but smile. "Well, boy," she said, her voice lightening, "it seems we've got some cleaning up to do." Cody trotted over and sat beside her, his expression calm and reassuring. Margaret reached for her phone, dialing a familiar number. "Emily, it's Mom," she said when her daughter answered. "Yes, I'm fine, but something happened tonight. Can you come over tomorrow? There's someone I want you to meet properly." Someone who saved my life. The next morning, Margaret's house was a flurry of activity. Emily arrived with her two young children, their wide eyes taking in the damage and, most importantly, Cody. "Mom, you weren't kidding," Emily said, kneeling to pet Cody. "He really is amazing." Margaret nodded, recounting the events of the night before, while Emily listened with a mix of shock and admiration. The children were enraptured by Cody, who patiently let them pet him, his tail wagging softly. "Can we get a dog like Cody?" one of them asked, looking up at their mom. Margaret smiled, feeling a swell of pride. "Cody isn't just any dog. He's one of a kind." Word of Cody's heroism spread beyond the neighborhood in the days that followed. The local newspaper ran a story titled, "Courageous Canine Saves Elderly Woman from Burglars," and soon reporters began showing up at Margaret's door. At first she was hesitant, not one for the spotlight, but she realized the importance of sharing Cody's story. "It's not just about what he did for me," she told a reporter one afternoon. "It's about what dogs like Cody can do for anyone willing to give them a chance. I found Cody at a shelter when he was scared and alone, but with love and trust, he's become my greatest protector." The story resonated deeply with the community, sparking an increase in shelter adoptions. Cody became something of a local celebrity, with neighbors dropping by to bring him treats and offer their admiration. For Margaret, the ordeal had turned into a powerful reminder of the resilience and love that animals could bring into people's lives. The sun set a few days later. Margaret sat on her porch, a cup of tea in her hands, and Cody lying contentedly at her feet. The garden swayed gently in the evening breeze, the chaos of the past few nights feeling like a distant memory. She reached down to stroke Cody's head, her voice soft. "You know, boy, I think we've taught the world a little something about courage." Cody looked up at her with his soulful eyes, as if understanding every word. Margaret smiled, her heart full. The bond between them, forged through love and tested through fire, was unbreakable. As the last rays of sunlight dipped below the horizon, Margaret felt a deep sense of peace. Whatever challenges the future held, she knew she wouldn't face them alone. With Cody by her side, she was ready for anything. Thank you for listening. If you loved Cody's story, leave a 2 in the comments. If you think there's more we could add, leave a 7. Don't forget to subscribe to Elderly Wisdom for more inspiring tales like this one.